"Excuse me, are you the guy who always orders the chocolate croissant?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at the small boy standing beside my table. Big blue eyes, messy brown hair, and a smile so innocent it made my chest tighten. "Yeah, that's me," I said, a little confused. "You're Theo, right? I've seen you come in here with your nanny." His smile grew wider. "I knew it. And you always draw on those big papers. My dad says artists are really cool people." I couldn't help but smile back. This kid had been watching me. "Your dad's got good taste. Do you like drawing too?" Theo nodded eagerly and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his small backpack. "Look, I made this. It's a dinosaur fighting a superhero." The drawing was adorable in that chaotic way only children's art could be. We ended up talking for a while about his favorite cartoons, what he was learning in school, and his obsession with space rockets. I didn't even realize how quickly the time passed. The next time he came to the coffee shop, he gave me an enthusiastic high five. The time after that, he shared his cookies with me. It became our little routine. Nothing formal, just a kid being friendly and me enjoying the simplicity of it. Then one Saturday morning, everything changed. Theo walked up to my table, but this time his eyes were red and watery. He clutched a wrinkled permission slip in his trembling hand. "Uncle Jasper," he said, his voice feigned, "I really need your help. Please." My heart sank. I gestured for him to sit down. "Hey buddy, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" He pushed the paper toward me. "There's a parent day at school on Monday. Everyone's parents are coming, but my dad, he said he can't make it. He's too busy." I glanced at the paper, Parent Participation Day, in bold letters, and then back at Theo's face, which was a mixture of hope and heartbreak. "What about your nanny? Maybe she's off that day," Theo interrupted quickly. "And all the other kids will have their moms or dads there. Uncle Jasper, could you pretend to be my dad? Just for one day?" My brain short-circuited. Pretend to be his parent? That was insane. I barely knew this kid beyond our coffee shop chats. "Theo, I don't think—" "Please." He grabbed my hand, his small fingers gripping mine tightly. "You're my friend. You're cool. If you come, I won't be the only one without someone there." I looked into those hopeful eyes and felt my resolve crumble. This wasn't about me. It was about a 6-year-old who just wanted to feel normal for one day. "All right," I heard myself say. "I'll be there." Theo's face lit up like a firework display. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and honestly, something inside me melted completely. Monday arrived faster than I wanted it to. Standing outside the school gates, I felt completely out of place. The building was pristine, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, parents arriving in luxury cars wearing designer outfits. Meanwhile, I was in my worn jeans and an old jacket that had seen better days. Theo grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't worry, Uncle Jasper. You're the best." A teacher greeted us at the entrance with a bright smile. "Oh, you must be Theo's father. We're so happy you could join us today." I forced an awkward smile. "Yeah, wouldn't miss it for anything." The activities began in the cafeteria. First up was clay modeling. Theo bounced with excitement. "Dad, let's make a dinosaur." Hearing him call me Dad made me choke on air. But I played along. We started molding the clay, and let me tell you, our dinosaur looked absolutely terrible. The woman next to us had created a perfect swan that looked like it belonged in an art gallery. She glanced at our lumpy creation and gave us a polite but clearly judgmental smile. Theo didn't care one bit. "Dad, this is the best dinosaur ever. Let's make it super strong like Godzilla." I caught his enthusiasm and went all in. "Absolutely. It needs muscles." I stuck little clay balls onto the sides like biceps. Theo burst out laughing. And so did I. Sure, it looked ridiculous, but it was genuinely fun. Next came the drawing activity. All around us, parents and children were creating elaborate family portraits. One kid turned to Theo and asked, "Is your dad an artist too?" Theo puffed up with pride. "Yes, he's the best artist in the whole world." He introduced me to his friends like I was some kind of celebrity. I drew a simple stick figure family. Me and Theo with oversized smiles. Nothing fancy, just honest and happy. Theo showed it to the teacher with such pride. "Look what my dad made." The teacher beamed. What a beautiful example of father-son bonding. The funniest moment came during lunch. All the other parents were instructing their children on proper etiquette. Chew with your mouth closed, use your napkin, sit up straight. Theo looked at me and asked, "Dad, do you do all that stuff too?" I kept a straight face. Of course. Always proper manners. Then I took a massive bite of my sandwich and the sauce squirted out the sides. Theo saw it and giggled. I shrugged and said, "Oops. Manners are taking a break today." Theo laughed so hard he accidentally knocked over his juice box. We cleaned up the mess together, both of us cracking up and not caring what anyone else thought. When the final bell rang, I felt a sense of relief mixed with satisfaction. The day had gone well. Theo was happy, and honestly, so was I. All I had to do now was drop him off, and that would be the end of our little charade. Simple. But as we walked toward the school gates, I noticed a sleek black SUV parked at the curb. It was the kind of vehicle that screamed wealth and power. And stepping out of it was a man who looked anything but friendly. He was tall with a sharp jawline, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. His gray eyes, identical to Theo's but completely devoid of warmth, locked onto me with an intensity that made my stomach drop. Andreas Cross, Theo's father. And from the way he was staring at me, I was pretty sure he thought I was kidnapping his son. Theo let go of my hand and stammered, "Dad, you're here early?" Andres ignored him completely, his gaze never leaving mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold and sharp as ice. "Who the hell are you?" And that's when I realized I was in serious trouble. "My name is Jasper," I managed to say, trying desperately to sound calm even though my heart was hammering in my chest. Andres Cross looked me up and down with the kind of scrutiny usually reserved for suspects in a police lineup. "And what exactly were you doing with my son?" His voice carried the weight of someone used to getting answers immediately. I took a steadying breath. "Theo asked me to help him out. It was parent day at school and you—" "I didn't ask you," Andres cut me off sharply, then turned his attention to Theo. "Get in the car. Now." Theo's face fell. "But Dad—" "Now Theo." I watched as Theo gave me one last guilty, sad look before climbing into the SUV. Andres stepped closer to me, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne and feel the full force of his intimidating presence. "Listen very carefully," he said in a low, dangerous voice. "I don't know who you think you are, or what game you thought you were playing, but stay away from my son. Do you understand me?" Anger flared in my chest. I had spent the entire day making that kid happy, and this man was treating me like some kind of criminal. I was just helping out a friend. Theo needed someone and you weren't. "I'll handle what Theo needs," Andres snapped. "Your services aren't required." Without another word, he got into the car and drove off, leaving me standing there with my face burning from a mixture of anger and humiliation. The next morning, I was working my shift at the coffee shop, trying to push yesterday's disaster out of my mind, when the door chimed. I looked up and felt my blood run cold. Andres Cross walked in wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were surprisingly distracting. He walked straight to the counter and said, "Jasper Carter. Correct?" My heart stopped. "How do you know my name?" He placed a brown envelope on the counter. "I had you investigated. Jasper Carter, 24 years old. Part-time barista. Art student. Clean record. No debts. No criminal history." Heat flooded my face, partly from embarrassment, partly from outrage. "You had no right." "I had every right," he interrupted. "You spent an entire day with my child without my knowledge. What did you expect me to do? Just take your word that you're harmless?" I bit back my retort because technically, he had a point. Still, it felt invasive and creepy. Andres continued, "I came here to discuss something important. You need to hear me out." I crossed my arms defensively. "Fine. Talk." For the first time, I saw him hesitate. It was brief, but it was there. "Theo has been talking about you non-stop since yesterday. Uncle Jasper did this. Uncle Jasper said that. He's attached to you." I raised an eyebrow. "And?" Andres paused as if the next words physically hurt him. "I want to hire you." I blinked. Once. Twice. "I'm sorry, what?" "Be Theo's companion," he said in a clipped, businesslike tone. "Part-time arrangement. 3 days per week. You pick him up from school, spend time with him, engage in activities. I'll pay you $3,000 per month." My brain completely shut down. $3,000? That would cover my rent, tuition, everything. But this whole situation was bizarre. Wait, let me get this straight. You want to pay me to spend time by your son? That's literally outsourcing parenting. His jaw tightened. Call it whatever you like. Theo needs consistency and stability. And for some reason, he trusts you. What about you? I challenged. Can't you make time for your own kid? Something flickered in his gray eyes. Pain, maybe guilt. But he controlled it quickly. I run a billion-dollar company. There are meetings, negotiations, international deals. Theo doesn't understand the demands of my work. But you can provide what I can't, which is, he looked directly into my eyes. Time, attention, normalcy. I went quiet. This man was so cold, so detached. Yet I could see genuine concern for his son buried beneath that icy exterior. He just didn't know how to express it. I sighed. All right, but I have conditions. One eyebrow arched. Go on. No surveillance cameras watching my every move. No micromanaging. When I'm with Theo, I decide what's best for him in that moment. Agreed? He considered this for a moment, then gave a slow nod. Agreed, but understand this. You're not his parent. You're hired help. Nothing more. That stung more than I wanted to admit, but I pushed the feeling aside and extended my hand. Deal. His handshake was firm, his fingers cold, and then he left without another word. I stared at my hand where his touch still lingered and wondered if I'd just made a terrible mistake. That night, lying in my small apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about the situation. Theo's innocent smile from the school day kept replaying in my mind, along with the genuine joy in his eyes when we were building that ridiculous clay dinosaur together. Then I thought about Andreas, the way his entire demeanor shifted between stone-cold businessman and someone who clearly cared about his son but had no idea how to show it. There was pain hidden behind that expensive suit and commanding garments. Deep pain. I wondered what had happened to make him build such high walls around himself. Why did he find it easier to hire a stranger than to simply be present for his own child? Something told me this job was going to be far more complicated than just picking up a kid from school and helping with homework. There were layers here, emotional wounds, unspoken trauma, a family fractured in ways I didn't yet understand. But I'd already agreed. Starting next Monday, my life was going to change completely. I'd be entering their world, a world of wealth, expectations, and apparently a lot of emotional baggage. Part of me was nervous. This wasn't just about money anymore. Theo deserved better than just a hired companion. He deserved genuine care, real attention, someone who actually wanted to be there for him. And Andreas? Well, he needed help whether he was willing to admit it or not. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling in the darkness, my mind racing with possibilities and concerns. Whatever I'd gotten myself into, there was no backing out now. Tomorrow would be the start of something entirely new, something that felt significant in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on. I just hoped I was ready for it. The first week went surprisingly smoothly. I picked Theo up from school, took him to the park, helped with homework, and made sure he ate properly. It felt natural, easy even. Theo had completely transformed. The quiet, serious little boy I'd first met at the coffee shop was gone. In his place was an energetic kid who cracked jokes, made silly faces, and told me every tiny detail led his day. Uncle Jasper, I got 100% on my spelling test. Uncle Jasper, my friend Kyle said your jacket is really cool. I found myself genuinely enjoying the time we spent together. This wasn't just a job, it was becoming something real. But Andres was a completely different story. He came home every evening at exactly 7 o'clock. Like clockwork. He'd walk through the door in his expensive suits, ask Theo a series of checklist questions. Did you finish your homework? Did Jasper make sure you ate vegetables? Good. Brush your teeth and get ready for bed, and then disappear into his study without so much as glancing in my direction. It was mechanical. Transactional. Everything a parent-child relationship shouldn't be. By the end of the second week, I noticed Theo getting quieter again. One afternoon at the park, he asked me, Uncle Jasper, is my dad mad at me? He never really talks to me anymore. My heart ached. No, buddy, he's not angry. He's just really busy with work. He's always busy, Theo said sadly. My mom was always busy too. Then she left. I pulled him into a side hug, unsure what to say. How do you explain adult complications to a 6-year-old? Your dad loves you very much, Theo. He's just not great at showing it. But he's trying. Even as I said it, I wasn't entirely convinced. That evening, after dropping Theo off, I gathered my courage and knocked on Andres' study door. He was hunched over his laptop, looking exhausted. "What is it?" he asked, without looking up. "Theo wants to actually talk to you, not just run through a checklist." Andres kept his eyes on the screen. "I know what's best for my son, Jasper. Just do your job." Something in me snapped. My job is to make Theo happy. And he won't be happy if all he gets from you is a 5-minute inspection every night. He wants you to see his drawings, hear about his day, actually be present. Andres slammed his laptop shut and stood up, towering over me. "You're giving me parenting advice?" "Seriously," I held my ground. "Yes, because you clearly need it. You're so buried in deals and meetings that you have no idea what your own son is feeling." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Be very careful about overstepping, Jasper. Remember your place." I didn't back down. "My place is with Theo. And if you have a problem with that, fire me." We stood there locked in a silent battle of wills. The tension was suffocating. Then Theo's small voice cut through the air. "Dad? Uncle Jasper? Are you fighting?" We both immediately plastered on fake smiles. "No, champ," Andres said quickly. "Just having a discussion." Theo looked confused but accepted the explanation and went to bed. I started gathering my things to leave, but Andres stopped me at the door. "Jasper." I turned around. He was standing there with his usual cold expression, but something in his eyes was different. "Soft." "You were right," he said quietly, as if admitting it caused him physical pain. "I'm not doing well with Theo. I know that." I stared at him, genuinely surprised. This was the first time Andres had admitted any kind of vulnerability. "But I'll try," he added quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the confession. "I'll do better. For him." I nodded. "That's all he needs. Just try." He gave a stiff nod and retreated back into his study. As I walked home, I felt like maybe, just maybe, something was beginning to shift. The next morning, when I arrived to pick up Theo, he was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. "Uncle Jasper, Dad had breakfast with me this morning," and he looked at my drawings. The pure joy in his eyes was priceless. From that day forward, Andres started making small changes. He was still incredibly busy, still had back-to-back meetings, but he made an effort. He started saying goodnight to Theo every evening. He asked about his son's artwork. He sat at the dinner table for 10 or 15 minutes instead of eating alone in his study. Theo was happier than I'd ever seen him, but something unexpected started happening to me. I found myself noticing Andres more than I should. The way he smiled, rare but genuine, when Theo said something funny. The exhaustion in his eyes after long workdays. The gentleness in his hands when he ruffled Theo's hair. And sometimes I'd catch him looking at me too. Quick glances when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Brief moments where our eyes would meet before he'd immediately look away. I tried to convince myself it was just professional respect. Appreciation for the help I was providing. Nothing more. But deep down I knew something was changing. And it scared me. One evening as I was preparing to leave, Andres walked me to the door. It was unusual. He normally just stayed in his study. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything you're doing, for Theo, and for pushing me to be better." His gray eyes held mine for a moment longer than necessary, and I felt my pulse quicken. "You're welcome," I managed to say. There was a strange energy between us. Something unspoken but undeniably present. For a few seconds neither of us moved, then he cleared his throat and stepped back. "Have a good evening, Jasper." "You too, Andres." As I walked to my car, I could feel his eyes on me. When I glanced back, he was still standing in the doorway watching me leave. I drove home with my thoughts in complete chaos. This was supposed to be simple. A job. Nothing more. I was here for Theo, to give him the attention and care he deserved. So why was I suddenly hyper-aware of every interaction with Andres? Why did his rare smiles make my chest tighten? Why did I find myself looking forward to those brief moments when we'd exchange a few words? I parked outside my apartment and sat in the darkness, gripping the steering wheel. This was dangerous territory. Andres was my employer. More importantly, I was here for his son. Getting emotionally involved would complicate everything and potentially hurt Theo in the process. I needed to keep my distance. Stay professional. Focus on why I was really there. But as I finally headed inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. Something had shifted between us. Subtle but undeniable, and I had no idea what to do about it. 3 weeks had passed and our routine had settled into something comfortable. Almost too comfortable. One afternoon, as we walked back from school, Theo looked up at me with those big blue eyes and said, "Uncle Jasper, you and Dad are both my best friends. I wish we could all stay together forever." My heart twisted painfully. "I'll always be here for you, buddy. As long as you want me around." "What about Dad?" he asked with childlike innocence. "Will he stay too?" I managed to smile despite the uncertainty churning in my gut. "Of course he will." But the following Friday everything became complicated. I arrived at the school gates to pick up Theo and found an elegant woman waiting there. She wore a designer coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her blonde hair styled to perfection, and her perfume announced her presence before she even spoke. She walked directly toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Jasper. I'm Victoria, a close associate of Andres." Theo shifted uncomfortably beside me, pressing closer to my side. Victoria continued, "Andres asked me to stop by and ensure everything is being handled appropriately with Theo." I kept my voice calm and professional. "Everything's going well. Theo's thriving." She stepped closer, her expression turning subtly condescending. "I'm certain you're doing your best. But you should understand something, Jasper. Andres's world is very exclusive. People from different backgrounds," she paused, looking me over with barely concealed judgment, "rarely fit into it long term." I understood immediately what this was. A territorial warning wrapped in polite conversation. I smiled back, equally fake. "Fortunate then that I'm only here for Theo's benefit." Her smile tightened, but she said nothing more. She simply turned and walked to her expensive car, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Theo grabbed my hand. "I don't like her, Uncle Jasper. She always makes Dad look tired and annoyed." I ruffled his hair gently. "Don't worry about it, buddy. She was just checking in." But the encounter left me unsettled. Who exactly was Victoria in Andres's life? And why did she feel entitled to warn me off? The questions circled in my mind all weekend. Sunday evening, when I brought Theo home, Andres was unusually present. Not hidden in his study, but actually in the living room. Theo ran straight to him with unbridled excitement. "Dad, we played soccer at the park today. Uncle Jasper taught me how to score goals." Andres's face lit up with a genuine smile. Something I rarely saw. He lifted Theo onto his lap. "Did he now? Show me how you kicked the ball." Theo eagerly demonstrated his new skills, and I started to quietly leave, wanting to give them this moment together. "Jasper." Andres's voice stopped me. "Wait. We need to talk." The nanny took Theo for dinner while Andres led me to his study. He stood by his desk with his usual commanding presence, but his expression was different, serious without being cold. "Victoria met you," he stated without preamble. I chose my words carefully. "She did. Mention she was a close associate of yours." His jaw tightened. "She's a business connection who's overstepped her boundaries. I've made it clear she's not to interfere with Theo's life." I was genuinely surprised by his defensive tone. "Then why does she think?" "People make assumptions," he cut me off. "They see a single father running a successful company and think they can insert themselves into that picture. But Theo," his expression hardened, "Theo is my only priority. Not her. Not anyone else." Then he looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "That includes you." My heart skipped, but I kept my voice steady. "I understand my place, Andres. I'm here for Theo. Nothing beyond that." He was silent for several seconds, and I could see something struggling behind his eyes. "Good. Because I don't want complications." But his voice wavered slightly, as if he was trying to convince himself more than me. I carefully shifted the conversation. "Speaking of Theo, he's doing wonderfully these days. But he wants more quality time with you. Real engagement, not just evening check-ins." Andres sighed and sat down at his desk, suddenly looking more exhausted than usual. "I'm aware. I've been trying." "I can see that," I said honestly. "And Theo notices too. But maybe you could take it further? Perhaps plan something special with him next weekend. Just the two of you?" He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw genuine vulnerability in his gray eyes. "I don't know what to plan. What if I do it wrong?" "Then you'll learn from it," I said gently. "That's what parents do. They try, they stumble, they try again. It's the effort that matters most. He nodded slowly, thoughtfully. All right. Next Saturday. I'll take him somewhere. Would you help me figure out where? I smiled. Absolutely. In that moment our eyes met and held. Something shifted between us, subtle but undeniably present. I quickly looked away. I should get going. It's getting late. He nodded, but as I reached the door he called my name again. Jasper. Thank you. For what you're doing for Theo. And for pushing me to be better at this. I turned back and smiled. That's what I'm here for, Andreas. As I drove home, my heart was still racing from that moment in his study. The way he'd looked at me, the vulnerability he'd shown, the gratitude in his voice, it all meant something. Something I isn't ready to fully acknowledge, because the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a job anymore. Somewhere along the way, between helping Theo with homework and watching Andres slowly open up, my feelings had evolved into something far more complicated. I cared about Theo deeply. That part was simple and pure. But what I was starting to feel for Andres, that was dangerous territory. He was my employer, the father of a child who depended on me, and a man carrying enough emotional baggage to sink a ship. Getting involved would be reckless and potentially devastating for everyone, especially Theo. Yet as I parked outside my apartment and sat in the darkness, I couldn't deny what was happening in my chest every time Andres smiled, every time his guard dropped just a little, every time our conversations went deeper than they should. I was falling for him, slowly against my better judgment but undeniably, and I had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The smart choice would be to maintain distance, keep everything professional, remember why I was really there, but my heart was already several steps ahead of my logic, racing towards something that could either be beautiful or catastrophic. I finally went inside, knowing that whatever came next, there was no going back to the simple arrangement we'd started with. Everything had changed, and I was terrified of what that meant. The following week felt almost normal, which somehow made me more nervous than ever. True to his word, Andres took Theo to the aquarium that Saturday. Just the two of them. When they returned, Theo couldn't stop talking about their adventure. Uncle Jasper, we saw real sharks swimming right above our heads, and Dad bought me ice cream even though I already had lunch. And look, we took pictures together. He showed me the photos on Andres's phone, and I felt genuine warmth spread through my chest. Theo looked radiantly happy, and Andres appeared more relaxed than I'd ever seen him, actually smiling in several shots. Sounds like you had an incredible day, buddy, I said, watching as Theo ran off to play with his toys. Andres and I were left alone in the living room. The silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable but weighted with unspoken things. Thank you, he said quietly. Without your encouragement, that wouldn't have happened. You're giving me too much credit, I replied. You're the one who actually showed up and spent the day with him. That was all you. He looked at me, really looked at me, and several seconds passed in loaded silence. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. Would you like to stay for dinner? Theo would enjoy having you here. I hesitated. Andres, I don't think— Please, he interrupted, and there was genuine sincerity in his voice. Just stay. So I did. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Theo sat between us, animated and happy, sharing stories about school while Andres listened with genuine interest. At one point, Andres laughed. A real warm, unguarded laugh. And I realized I'd never heard that sound from him before. For a brief moment, we felt like an actual family. But then Theo, drowsy from his exciting day, said something that made the air in the room change completely. I wish Uncle Jasper could live here with us. Then we'd always be together. The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. Andres's expression shifted, his walls immediately going back up. He cleared his throat. It's bedtime, champ. You've got school tomorrow. Theo reluctantly agreed, gave me a sleepy hug goodnight, and went to his room. I started gathering my things to leave, but Andres stopped me. Come to the terrace with me for a moment. I followed him up the stairs and outside onto the rooftop terrace. The city lights sparkled below us, and the cool night air helped clear some of the tension from downstairs. Andres stood by the railing, hands in his pockets, staring out at nothing. There's something I need to tell you, he said without looking at me. I walked closer. I'm listening. He took a deep breath, as if the words physically hurt to say. Theo's mother walked out when he was 2 years old. No warning, no explanation. She just left and never looked back. My heart ached for both of them. But I didn't interrupt. I just listened. After that, I threw myself into building the company, creating success, maintaining control over everything I could. I built walls because I refused to let anyone hurt him again. I couldn't allow anyone to get close enough to cause that kind of damage. He finally turned to face me, and the raw pain in his eyes was almost unbearable to witness. But then you came along and made him happy in ways I couldn't. And I don't know how to process that. I spoke softly. Andres, I'm not trying to replace you. Theo needs you more than anyone else. But he also needs you to let yourself be vulnerable. To trust people again. Trust, he said bitterly. Trust gave me nothing but pain and abandonment. I took a step closer. Our proximity now undeniably intimate. Not everyone is the same, Andres. And Theo deserves to see his father truly happy. Maybe you deserve that too. His eyes searched mine. What do you want, Jasper? The question hung in the air between us. Dangerous and loaded. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. But I decided to be honest. I want Theo to be happy. And I want you to be happy too. His breath hitched. The space separating us seemed to shrink even though neither of us had moved. His hand lifted slowly and touched my arm, sending electricity through my entire body. Jasper, he whispered, and my name on his lips sounded different, softer, more vulnerable, almost desperate. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stood there looking into his gray eyes, feeling the cold wind around us while heat built between us. My pulse raced. Andres? I started to say something, anything, but then his phone buzzed loudly. Reality crashed back in, harsh and immediate. He pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, and I watched his professional mask slam back into place. I need to take this. Work emergency. I nodded, my throat tight. Of course. I should go anyway. He nodded back, but his eyes were conflicted, torn. Jasper, it's fine, I said quickly. I understand. Good night, Andre. I left before either of us could say anything else that we might regret. Or before we could do something we definitely would regret. When I got back to my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my hands shaking and my heart still racing. The reality of the situation crashed over me like a wave. This wasn't just a job anymore. These were real, complicated, terrifying feelings developing inside me. And the worst part was that I couldn't tell if Andres felt the same way or if he was just confused, grateful for my help with Theo. Nothing more. But one thing was absolutely certain. Whatever was building between us was dangerous. If I wasn't careful, I could lose everything. I could lose Theo, this job, and possibly my own heart in the process. I sat there in the darkness for a long time, trying to figure out what to do next. The professional thing would be to maintain boundaries, keep my distance, remember my role. But my heart had already made its choice, whether my head agreed or not. I was falling for Andres Cross, and I had no idea if that was the bravest or most foolish thing I'd ever done. All I knew was that going back to how things were before, pretending these feelings didn't exist, was no longer possible. Everything had changed, and there was no undoing it now. The next few days were awkward. Andres became more formal. I maintained more distance, but Theo remained blissfully unaware, happy in his own little world. Then Wednesday arrived, almost 4 weeks into my employment, and Andres called me. I have to go to London, he said without preamble. Major business deal. 3 weeks. My stomach dropped. 3 weeks? Andres, not right now. Theo, I'm aware of what he needs, he interrupted, his voice sharp but with a slight crack underneath. That's why you'll move to full-time care. Everything's arranged. Additional compensation included. This isn't about money, I said, frustration bleeding into my voice. Theo needs you. You finally started connecting with him. If you leave now, this deal could transform the entire company, he said defensively. I can't refuse it. You can refuse it, I challenged. You just don't want to. Because the company is your safe space. It's easier than dealing with emotions. Silence. Heavy, painful silence. You don't understand, Jasper. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. I pressed. Because Theo won't understand why his father left again. I always come back, he said quietly. I always have, but how much damage happens in between? I asked. He'd already made his decision though. I'm leaving Monday, please take care of him. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone, feeling frustrated and helpless. Sunday came too quickly. When I arrived at the house, Theo was already crying. Uncle Jasper. He threw himself into my arms. Dad's leaving again. For 3 whole weeks. Andreas stood in the living room in his business suitcase beside him, his expression tight with guilt. I'm sorry, champ, he said to Theo. But I'll call you every single day. I promise. You're always busy. Theo sobbed. You forget just like Mom did. Andreas's face crumpled with pure pain. He knelt down and gently held Theo's face in his hands. I'm nothing like your mother. I will come back. I always do. And Jasper will be right here with you. Theo reluctantly nodded, but the tears didn't stop. Andreas stood, grabbed his suitcase and headed for the door. He gave me one last look, filled with guilt, regret, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Then he was gone. The next 3 weeks were the hardest I'd experienced. Theo had nightmares almost every night, waking up crying and calling for his father. I slept in his room, told him stories until he calmed down, reassured him repeatedly that everything would be okay. Andres did call daily, but the calls were always rushed. I could hear people talking in the background, sense his distraction. And every time, Theo ended the call looking more hurt than before. Uncle Jasper, has Dad forgotten about me? He asked one night, tears streaming down his face. Never, I said firmly, holding him close. He could never forget you. He's just confused about how to balance everything. But he loves you more than anything. During the 2nd week, Theo became withdrawn at school. His teacher called me, concerned. Jasper, Theo's not participating like usual. Is everything all right at home? I assured her we were handling it, but privately I was worried too. Near the end of the 3rd week, Theo asked me a question that broke my heart. If Dad comes back and then leaves again, you'll stay with me, right? Yes, Theo. I promised. I'll always be here. You promise? I promise. Finally, Sunday night arrived, and Andreas came home. He looked exhausted as he opened the door, but what happened next clearly devastated him. Theo didn't run to greet him. He stayed on the couch beside me, quietly coloring, barely glancing up. Theo? Andreas called softly. Theo looked over, hesitated, then slowly walked to his father. Hi, Dad. No excitement. No hug. Just polite distance. Andreas tried to pick him up, but Theo remained stiff and uncomfortable in his arms. Andreas looked at me over Theo's head, helpless, broken, desperate, and I could see the realization dawning on him, what he'd lost. I brought you a gift, Andreas tried, his voice unsteady. That's okay, Theo said quietly. I'm tired. I want to sleep now. He walked to his room without saying goodnight, without the usual hug. Andreas stood there, completely shattered. Later that night, after Theo had finally fallen asleep, Andreas came to find me. He sat on the couch, buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I've ruined everything, he said, his voice breaking. I've lost him. I sat beside him. You haven't lost him, Andreas. But the trust has been damaged. Rebuilding it will take time and consistency. I don't know how, he said, looking up with red, wet eyes. I don't know how to fix this. Start small, I said gently. Be present, consistently. Show him he's your priority, not the company, not the deals. He looked at me with complete vulnerability and fear in his eyes. What if I fail again? Without thinking, I took his hands in mine. The first time I'd offered him physical comfort like this. Then you get back up and try again. That's what parents do. They fail, they learn, they keep trying. And I'm here to help you. His breathing was shaky. The space between us closed naturally, unintentionally. His hand moved to my cheek, warm and trembling. Jasper, he whispered. And it was a confession, a surrender, a plea all at once. I surrendered too. We pressed our foreheads together, eyes closed, hearts racing in sync. This is wrong, he breathed, but didn't pull away. I know, I whispered back. But it's also real, and I can't lie about it anymore. Neither can I, he admitted. And then slowly, carefully, we kissed. It was soft and desperate and terrifying and perfect all at once. When we finally pulled apart, there were tears in his eyes. I can't lose both of you. Theo and you're everything to me. Then don't leave, I said firmly, holding his hands. Stay. Fight for this. Fight for him. For us. He nodded, shaky but determined. I will. I promise. And from that night forward, everything changed. Gradually, carefully, Andres shifted his priorities. He started refusing meetings when Theo needed him. He blocked out weekends entirely. He spent real, quality time with his son, and the three of us slowly became something like a family. Imperfect, complicated but genuine. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, being present, and choosing each other every single day. And finally, after so much struggle and pain, we were all choosing each other, together.